Well, Zelda II: The Adventure of Link is a divisive Legend of Zelda entry. It's very different from other entries with its side-scrolling action and RPG mechanics. Plus, it's also got the controversial live system. It's got more in common with Metroid and Castlevania than it does with other Legend of Zelda games, but there's just something about it that I love. It was my first Zelda game and I wound back the clock to play it once again, and today I'm going to bring you my own review of Zelda II: The Adventure of Link. Well, Zelda II: The Adventure of Link originally came out in 1987, just short of a year after the first game. Nintendo rightly had the confidence in the first Legend of Zelda game, much like Mario Bros. 2, and they took a dramatically different direction with the sequel. The first game was top-down in what would become a very familiar formula for the series, and Zelda 2 did retain some top-down elements, but only for navigating the Hyrule map. The main gameplay loop of the game is very focused on action and sword fighting, but in a side-scrolling view, so Link can slash with his sword, defend with his shield, plus this is a very difficult game, given you only have a certain amount of lives, so precision and persistence is absolutely key. Nintendo diverted from the foundation set by the first Legend of Zelda game in other ways too. While the gameplay focuses mainly on intense sword battles and bullet hell-like enemy encounters with magic, and classic Zelda exploration and secrets, they are also big plus points of the game. Link has a list of spells that you can acquire from wise old men in various towns across Hyrule, and they help him in battle or getting around the environment itself. The shield is one of the most used spells throughout the game, which will often soften the blow of enemies, plus you've got jump, which allows you to have a high jump, and then you've got fairy, which unsurprisingly turns you into a fairy so you can get to those hard reach places. Exploration and secrets are here too in Zelda II: The Adventure of Link. It offers up some of the best moments in the game, so given the limitations of the Nintendo Entertainment System, much like the first Zelda game, you have to work hard for these secrets, although they aren't quite obtuse as in the first game, where a guide is almost essential. In Zelda II: The Adventure of Link, there are at least clues. For example, earlier on you meet a small boy who tells you to go south when you get to King's Tomb, and that reveals a secret passageway to get to the Island Palace. So this is a great moment when you first fall through that secret hole and end up near a dungeon. It's surprising and also very satisfying, and probably one of the reasons why I fell in love with the game at an early age. There are other decent secrets in the game, like finding the mirror, and also the simple but effective NPC quests to find the wise old men in the towns, plus you've got the palace items to help make your way through Hyrule, like the raft and the flute. Nintendo also introduced RPG mechanics to Zelda II: The Adventure of Link, where you can level up 3 abilities, so health, attack and magic. Throughout the game you have to collect magic containers and also gather XP, which is shown in the top right of the screen. Well, this naturally levels you up throughout the game, but you are rewarded for your exploration, given you're going to find heart containers and pouches of XP. You are gated from progress in the game if you don't level up enough, so it's definitely worth your time exploring and gathering XP as you go, as to not hit these artificial gate points. This can be really frustrating and off-putting, which most likely adds to this sense of frustration, and why some fans of the series don't enjoy this entry at all. So the final difference I'm going to talk about is the live system. So you start off with 3 lives, and when you die you go back to the start of the last screen that you entered, and when you lose all your lives you go back all the way to the start in the middle of Hyrule, next to Princess Zelda, who spends much of the game asleep. Most of the time dying doesn't really matter, it's fairly easy to get back to where you need to be quite quickly, but the only time this is really an issue is when you have to get through something like Death Mountain on your way to get the hammer earlier on in the game, or when you're fighting a boss in a palace. If you lose all your lives, you have to go all the way back through Hyrule and make your way through that palace. That can often include Blue Iron Knuckles, and if you haven't encountered Blue Iron Knuckles before, these are perhaps some of the most annoying enemies in all games, not just Zelda games. So the life system is unique to Zelda II: The Adventure of Link. After this, it didn't appear in the Zelda franchise again. Well, sword fighting is a big part of Zelda II: The Adventure of Link. Link starts out with basic attacks and he can stand and attack or crouch and attack with his sword. Link also uses his shield to fend off enemies and projectiles. You don't actually have to press a button to activate the shield, Link always holds it in front of him, making this action nice and easy. You simply have to face the direction of the attack or the thing flying towards Link's head. Well, later on in the game you learn new sword techniques like the downward and the upward slash, and that is great for the variety of attacking styles, but also good for traversal, given the downward slash stops you from taking damage when you're jumping over enemies. Well, the gameplay structure of Zelda II The Adventure of Link is as follows. So you explore Hyrule to find an item or a town, speak to the old man in the town to get the spell, make your way to a palace via an occasional puzzle, then you find an item in a palace which unlocks a new area of Hyrule, solve that palace, beat the boss, and then you repeat that process. And while much is different about Zelda 2 when compared to Zelda 1, there are familiarities too. The sense of discovery is there, there's plenty of secrets to uncover, the music is absolutely fantastic, and this is the first game when Nintendo started building the world of Hyrule. Yeah, one benefit of the RPG design of the game is you get to speak to loads of characters there, and that builds the world making it richer from a narrative point of view. And while the gameplay of Zelda 1 is arguably better, the lore and the story of Zelda 2 star, and really do bring the series forward. So while I do think the game is good, there are also very frustrating elements, and the game can feel outright obtuse at times. The Death Mountain sequence is a particular part of the game that is tough, and part of the game that had me dying time and time again, and thankfully it didn't make me quit the game, although there are moments in the game where you consider whether it's worth it or not. You know, the final palace, the Great Palace, is so difficult, really, and that final boss, really tough. It really makes you pull your hair out. Overall, I really do think it's worth it though, and if you're a fan of the Zelda series, it's great to go back to and see where the series came from. You can see plenty of the DNA in modern Zelda games in older titles. For example, A Link to the Past influenced many versions after it, and in comparison, Zelda 2 didn't really influence many. Personally, I would love to see a modern remake of Zelda 2. I'm not really sure this will happen though, because according to series creator Shigeru Miyamoto, The Adventure of Link is the only Legend of Zelda game he considers a failure due to the limitations of the hardware. Well, talking of Miyamoto, the development of The Adventure of Link started with his idea of creating a side-scrolling game which used up and down movements for attack and defense. And that idea was then developed as a new sword and shield action game that did not follow the systems seen in the first Legend of Zelda. At the end of the development, the game was considered as a type of spin-off until it was decided on a story where Link would be 16 years old, attaching Zelda to the title. You know, the levelling up system was added so players could battle enemies multiple times, while encounters on the overworld added a luck factor into the narrow map. You know, the high difficulty of the game was implemented to extend the play sessions due to the lack of content in the game, and that explains the high difficulty, which makes sense given its release date of 1987. So this is also a rare sequel in Zelda titles. So Ocarina of Time had Majora's Mask, they are linked as direct sequels, but Zelda 2 is also a direct sequel from Zelda 1, so in the timeline revealed in the book Hyrule Historia, The Adventure of Link takes place in the Downfall branch after Ocarina of Time, and it's the latest entry in that timeline, which has its roots in Ocarina of Time, and started with A Link to the Past. Now after Ganon is defeated in A Link to the Past, Oracle of Seasons and Oracle of Ages, A Link Between Worlds, Hyrule then entered the Golden Era, in which the wise Hyrule monarchs used the Triforce to govern the land. You know, after the last king's death and the attempt of the Prince of Hyrule to assemble the complete Triforce, Hyrule was led to the era of decline, and the Prince of Darkness Ganon was revived, leading to the events of The Legend of Zelda, but ultimately he was defeated by Link. The events of The Adventure of Link takes place a few years later, but refer back to Princess Zelda, who was put under a sleeping spell at the beginning of the era of decline. Well, I'm probably a little bit biased when it comes to Zelda II The Adventure of Link. As I said, I played through this one as a kid with my dad. I remember sitting on the carpet in front of our NES and our old school TV, playing through it with him, and I think I completed it as a kid. I do remember facing off against Shadow Link, and he of course is the final boss, but it really is one of my first gaming memories, and also one of the memories that led me to fall in love with not only the Legend of Zelda series, but video games itself. You know, if you're a fan of the Legend of Zelda series, Zelda 2 is a standout title. It really isn't like any other title, and while some players really don't like it, I reckon it's worth going back and giving it a go. For me personally, I got a lot out of that playthrough. And while this game is difficult and there's definitely some obtuse parts in the game, there's loads to really like about it as well. You've got the RPG mechanics, you've got the world building, you've got the magic spells, and also you've got that sense of adventure and the secrets too. I reckon it's well worth going back and giving Zelda 2 The Adventure of Link a playthrough for yourself. Well, that is it for my review of Zelda 2 The Adventure of Link. And as always, thank you so much for watching or listening. For more Legend of Zelda content like this, hit that subscribe button down below and subscribe to Triforce Times. Or you can check me out on Twitter at Triforce Times. Well, if you enjoyed this video, found it useful, liking and sharing the video would really help me out. Otherwise, check out the other videos on the channel. Well, thanks again, and I'll see you soon.